Hello, Bill.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Matt.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon. Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
I'm probably going to keep things on the short side today because I don't know if everyone in DMZ land knows, but I have a puppy. I think the puppy's awake.
And you've had this puppy has been plaguing you and dominating you for months now, though.
I don't want to get the annals of dog world up in my grill. Let's just say that I did not fully appreciate what was involved in having a puppy.
That's why I like old dogs, children, and watermelon wine.
If anybody ever wonders, gee, Bill hasn't been on Twitter a lot today, what's going on? Chances are I'm with a puppy.
Well, Bill, I felt like once the kids were back at school, you needed something to keep you on your toes. So the puppy would be a natural next step.
I had all this free time just lazing about. They needed to fill in some way. I was really missing that activity. So it's really worked out for everybody.
I'm picturing you lounging in a chair outside, getting some rays. You're reading a presidential biography, and the puppy's in the lap, snuggling, petting the puppy, and it's got to be an amazing life.
This does not appear to be, at least not yet, not a lap dog. It's not a lounging about the house lazy lap dog. Maybe again, I know nothing about dogs. I should not be the person training a puppy. But there's not a lot of lazy time with the dog right now.
Welcome to Pet Talk with Bill and Matt.
I wonder if is there a podcast of like dog owners who don't know what they're doing? That would be a good show.
I think I look at everything as a potential book pitch. So this could be like a memoir, how you discover and the truths that you discover about yourself going through this process.
Here's what I learned this week. I don't know if it's just where I live or in general, but apparently there are people in this world who just carry around milk bones and just give them to you.
If you have a dog, I assume.
Right. Okay. But like there's like a dog network out there. Yeah. It's like literally a woman was in a car, stopped the car, took a milk bone out from like the tray by the driver's seat and gave me a milk bone. Like people do that. There's
a community. You're going to get to know some neighbors you haven't seen in a while. You're going to get exercise. You're forced to be outside. Some studies, I think, show crime rates go down in communities where people are out walking their dog.
I don't know if I want to be friends with dog people. I mean,
I'm not a dog person.
Exactly. Well, you know what? When I was in college, I briefly entertained being a computer science major. And I was taking the initial classes, but then it became readily apparent that to succeed in computer science class, you had to go to computer science lab in your free time and congregate with other computer science majors and like talk about your code with them because you couldn't do it yourself. Like it wasn't possible to actually solve these puzzles yourself. I was like, I don't want to be with you. I don't want this to be my life.
We do this, Bill. That's why we do this job.
And then when you become a parent, you before you're a parent, you've successfully curated your social life.
Yes.
I only talk to the people that I want to talk to, and the people I don't want to talk to, I don't gotta see anymore. And then you're thrust to a school community, and like you're exposed to a whole range of new people, and you don't get to choose whether you like them or not. You just got to start hanging with other parents. Period.
Some people do that, Bill. I have the same challenge sometimes, and at my church we call it fellowshipping with people at picnics, and they don't even serve beer at these things. It's bad enough to have social anxiety at a party, but try going to a hymn sing. Welcome to my world, Bill.
So you can choose to not be in that world. You can make that choice. Now, granted, I didn't choose the puppy. The puppy was thrust upon me. So again, I've been put into a situation. You choose to be a parent, of course, most of the time. You don't totally get what comes with that. All the things that come with that bargain, you're not aware of when you enter into the contract. And same with the puppy. I did not know what I was getting myself into, and now I'm like in dog world, and I'm obviously never going to get out for the foreseeable future.
This is like a year, almost exactly a year ago, Bill, when I was informed that I was now managing a Little League baseball team. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So there are ups and downs. I think that I predict, as hard as it is, that there will be things that will come from this, and I think you're going to end up loving that dog more than anybody else in the family.
Well, I'll tell you, for a long time, you are the person that I talk with more than anybody, and you're now being replaced by the dog. The dog is who I see more than anybody else in my life.
It wouldn't be the first time. I've had other, usually girlfriends in the past, but I'll accept it, because you know what? If you want a friend in Washington, get a dog, and there's truth there. It is nice. I mean, I haven't had a dog in a while. We used to have two pugs, Uncle Rico and Mr. Little Jeans, and you come home, and these were middle-aged dogs that we got from a rescue, so they were not rowdy. You come home and they're there on the couch, and no matter what happened, how bad a day you had, Uncle Rico will sit there with his little chin on your knee and watch football with you. It's great.
Maybe that day will come for this dog.
I need to get a few miles on that.
I don't know when that day is. We should get down to business, though. Okay. For this dog, it's totally insane.
All right. Well, we got the China Olympics, the Beijing Olympics. We have Mike Pence and Mitch, Cocaine Mitch, who are finally, really going after Trump now, at least rhetorically.
Let's talk Pence. I don't know anything about the Olympics, but Pence, I'm fascinated with Pence and McConnell. But I've gone on repeatedly that vice presidents are often dismissed for some reason in presidential primaries, yet they almost always win presidential primaries. Now, Pence is obviously a unique case. I mean, if there was going to be an exception to the rule of vice presidents winning primaries, he would be it, because he might run against his former president, which would take away his natural VP advantage.
Yeah, that's even harder than running against his son.
Which Dan Quayle had to suffer in 2000 and ended up having to bow out before Iowa. He's the only person in the modern presidential primary era who was a vice president who didn't win, unless you count Hubert Humphrey in 1972, which was really the first modern presidential primary. But Humphrey was the nominee in 1968, so he's already a presidential nominee loser. I think it's a bit of a different thing than just being the titular leader of the party as next person in waiting. So if Trump doesn't run, Trump is already trashing Pence. So it's not like he doesn't get the glow of being the person who was handpicked. That the normal advantages aren't there for him. So I would hardly say it's a given he becomes the nominee, but I do think that there is some base of support there. There is a faction of the Republican Party that is, is conservative. They're not a Larry Hogan rhino, and they're not going to necessarily, trash Trump publicly. They might say if a pollster calls, they might say they approve of Trump or they're favorable to Trump, but it doesn't mean that they're loyal to Trump. I think there is a soft Trump faction of the party. I'm not saying it's enough to win a nomination.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it exists, and to the extent that it exists and perhaps could grow, Pence is in a good place to own that piece of the party. And he's had enough gumption to separate himself from Trump on this score, on the January 6th score, and not be a total sycophant. So he at least has that going for him.
I think Pence is playing the hand that he was dealt well, unlike, say, Nikki Haley. But I think that, and I agree with you. I think that Pence is underrated. His chances are underrated by conventional wisdom. Having said that, I still think he has got to thread the needle exactly perfectly, because it really feels like Mike Pence would have been a great politician in like the George W. Bush era, but times have changed, and so I think he's playing the best hand he could possibly play. But is can he win with that hand?
Well, I think times have to change again.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, if it's still Trump's party by 2024, then it's not going to be him. The question is, will Trump's hold in the party weaken between now and then? And there are probably some things have to happen that are out of his control. Like, just for example, let's say, Trump is playing in a lot of primaries right now. How many of those primaries does his preferred candidate actually win? How many times does his preferred candidate win the primary and lose the general?
Yeah.
The biggest embarrassment would be if Stacey Abrams won Georgia, either because Kemp was the nominee but weakened because of the Purdue challenge, or Purdue was the nominee and Abrams beat Purdue. Either way, that'd be a massive humiliation for Trump. They lost Georgia twice, essentially.
Yeah. There's also the possibility that Trump's in jail, or that Trump's dead, or that Trump just decides not to run and he kind of meddles from the outside, but he doesn't actually run. And so then Pence is up against, say, like a Ron DeSantis or something, something like that. So I think that, again, though, it's the odds are not good. However, I think the odds. So if Pence, how do I put this? If Pence was very nice to Trump and continued to suck up to Trump, he would have no shot. Because, like, if you like Trump, you've got Trump. Or if you like Trump and Trump can't run, you've got DeSantis. So Pence needs to separate, as you said, and that is exactly what he's doing. He's trying to, but also he's trying to be. There's the danger of it coming across as being too cute by half, right? Where he's trying to kind of have his cake and eat it too. He wants to separate from Trump, but not too much, not too much, just right. I don't think Bush ever did that, but for some reason I felt like it's something Dana Carvey might have done.
I think Pence has positioned himself better to run in a race that includes Trump more so than DeSantis has. DeSantis has done very well for himself, but would you vote for DeSantis over Trump if Trump is available to you? Because he's still a Trump-like figure. And now Trump's getting tangled up with Trump saying you're betraying me. You're not sufficiently deferential to me when I made you. Maybe again.
Let me game it out, okay? So Trump and Pence both run. Pence is going to basically say, "I'm proud of what President Trump and I accomplished." And Trump will be like, "You weren't part of any of, you didn't do much." I don't know. But he's going to try to say, like, "I'm proud of what we accomplished together. I'm proud of the policies, but it's time to move on. We can't be looking backward. It's time to move on. I will be the good things about Trump without the chaos." He'll say that. And, like, I guess it either works or it doesn't. And that's the gamble, right? I mean, what else is there?
I mean, I think the only way it works for Pence, the Republican primary electorate has to care more about winning than about grievance. I mean, I don't think "I'm going to pardon the insurrectionists" is a great general election message for 2024. But if you just want someone there to say that, because it's fun to have a guy lead your party who does stuff like that, then you'll nominate him regardless whether he wins or loses.
I mean, maybe he needs. I'm thinking about, like, how things are dynamic, right? You mentioned how he needs Trump to stumble a little bit. Yeah. Pence probably needs, like, polling to show that he would be better against Joe Biden or whoever. Pence beats Biden, Trump loses.
Yeah, I think Pence needs that polling. I think Trump needs to have some whiffs in 2022. Like, Pence is not in full control of his own destiny. But I mean, right now there's this very high expectation. The Republicans are going to have a great midterm in 2022 for good reason. But Republicans have made midterm mistakes in the recent past by nominating Todd Akin or Christine O'Donnell or Richard Murdoch.
Or how about when Republicans call it legitimate what was the word?
Legitimate political discourse. I mean,
Right.
like, I don't know if this is if
Legitimate rape, legitimate political discourse, both are problematic.
I mean, this may get forgotten by November, of course. I mean, this is obviously getting people very agitated right now. And it may be, it may totally be the case that Biden's troubles will outweigh everything else. And almost everything has to go right for the Democrats to not lose control of the House and Senate. But because you have that high expectation on the Republican side, anything Trump does to screw that up would be bad for Trump, so long as enough Republicans care about winning first and foremost, which may not be the case. But if there is a frustration that, hey, we could have won this thing, and I like Trump, he's fun and all, but come on.
Well, and that would be not the first loss that Donald Trump has delivered for the Republican Party, so it would be a pattern. There's something else here too. So Mitch McConnell publicly criticizes Trump, and nothing happens. He doesn't spontaneously combust. He doesn't lose his spot as minority leader. Mike Pence criticizes Donald Trump. And if you listen to that speech very carefully, he essentially, if you're reading between the lines, he says that Trump is un-American, or Trump wanted him to do something that was un-American. The idea that it's un-American, the idea that one person can pick the next president. And nothing happens. And so, I talked to Tom LoBianco yesterday about this on my podcast. He's the author of the book Piety and Power about Mike Pence. And I just think there's something to be said for there's a great fear about criticizing Trump. And now we have two people who have done it pretty blatantly, and nothing bad happened to them. I mean, I think Trump did criticize them both, but it doesn't have the same sting that it used to have for whatever reason. Maybe because he's not on Twitter, maybe because he's starting to erode some of his power. But I think what happens is that weakness invites provocation. A lot of people want to be president, and they like to do it in 2024. And if they have a sense that, it's game on now, that's going to change things.
Well, I'm hesitant to say person did X and nothing happened, because nothing happened obviously right away. I mean, I heard for years, Trump does this and he gets away with it. And I think you look back and say, no, he didn't. He lost the House and then the presidency and then the Senate. He was fully held accountable for all the awful things they did by voters. He did not get away with it.
But the problem is, in the NFL, if you win a fluke game, the next week you're going to get crushed by the Patriots or something.
Right.
But in politics, if you win a fluke presidency, you dine out on that for 4 years of people thinking that you're this miracle worker before we get to test ever. I mean, there's tests like midterms, but that's not exactly the same. You have 4 years of people thinking that you're this brilliant, Politico.
Well, Pence is not going to be adjudicated in 2022 for the most part, unless he starts making some endorsements. I mean, he said at one point that he was going to endorse incumbent Republican governors. He told us the Republican Governors Association. And he said that before Trump endorsed Purdue in Georgia. So I've yet to see Pence follow through on that pledge and endorse Kemp. But if he did.
But I think, by the way, I think the RGA is supporting Kemp.
Yes, they are. I mean,
he's the incumbent governor. It makes sense, but they're going against Trump.
That's right. So if Pence plays there, that becomes a little bit of a proxy war, then something in 22 might be relevant to Pence. Now, McConnell, I think, is more interesting here because, and I think Democrats misjudge McConnell all year long in this regard because they assumed, based on things that McConnell has said in the past, that he was going to be just obstructionist, start to finish, help with nothing, maximum dysfunction, tie the Democrats' hands and make them look like the fool. And it's not what McConnell has done. McConnell has played it as, we will help you on the basics. We won't shut down the government. We will raise the debt limit. We'll even pass some bills that, are non-controversial. Some things even have a little bit of a liberal, sheen to it, anti-hate crimes legislation. I mean, right now they're queuing up the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization.
How about a Supreme Court justice, baby?
I mean, he might well vote for the next judge that comes down the pike. He voted for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Well, he's not trying to stop it.
I mean,
for what that's worth.
I mean, honestly, it's a freebie vote because the judge will mostly get confirmed anyway because there's no filibuster power for judges anymore. So throw him a vote and say you were bipartisan. What the hell, you know? But I mean, that's a vote where he wasn't the determining factor. McConnell has actually helped pass legislation that could not pass without him or without some other faction of Republicans. And we may see it on the Electoral Count Act reform coming up.
Yeah.
With the infrastructure, the China bill, forced labor bill, with Uyghur labor. This isn't the big picture shoot the moon stuff Democrats wanted. It's not that McConnell's Joe Biden's best friend, but it's a different strategy than maximum obstruction and maximum dysfunction.
Yeah, well, and honestly, that was never exactly right anyway. Like the idea that McConnell solely obstructed Obama wasn't exactly right either, but it's certainly not correct this time around.
I mean, that was the era of the judicial filibuster. They definitely were much more difficult about judges when they had the power to do so until Reid took that power away from them.
That's true.
And they played more games with the debt limit with Obama than were played this time around.
Yeah, I don't know if that was McConnell per se, but Republicans definitely did.
But in Obama's first 2 years, of course, they had 60 votes for a time, so McConnell's hand was weaker. So it's not the same playing field. But
you know what? I have a soft spot for McConnell, as you may know. I just really regret that he didn't vote and try to get to impeach Trump and have him.
We could have gotten convicted and have him banned from running again, and cleanse the party of him.
And I wonder if McConnell, if I could get him on sodium pentothal or some Kentucky bourbon, I wonder if he would admit. I wonder if he thinks that. I think he might.
I mean, I'm sure Parvin would have liked to, but he wants to win. He's not voting for these bipartisan bills because he's a nice guy. He's making the calculation that Democrats are going to have their own problems in the midterms. Let's not do something that takes the focus off of them and gets us dragged as the problem. If there's any problems going on in Washington right now, it is solely on them, not on us. Yeah. We're voting for the basic stuff, so they can't tag us with that. And as far as not impeaching Trump, not convicting Trump, I'm sure McConnell is reluctant to take things so far. He wants the party to stay unified. I mean, it's a balancing act between keeping the party unified and not alienating the swing. He's not being maximum obstructionist because he knows that could hurt with the swing. And I don't think he goes out of his way to say statements like he just did, calling January 6th what it was, an armed insurrection. He's pretty sporadic in making those kinds of blunt comments. On the whole, he tries to avoid saying things that expose divides in the party. But push comes to shove. If he feels like, look, this is really, if I don't say this, it's going to send the wrong message to the middle, then he's going to say it. But he picks his spots.
Yeah.
And Democrats could have, and to some extent they are now, they wouldn't have wasted as much time as they did with the partisan strategy, chasing Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, which was not as easy as they thought it was going to be. If they recognize, you know what, McConnell's open for business right now. Yeah. Let's see what we can get out of him first. And once we max out on McConnell's help, then we can talk about reconciliation.
Yeah, I think they were overly cynical and skeptical. I thought they should have tried the partisan route. And if it doesn't work, then you could say, well, we tried. They didn't even try. They didn't try.
The bipartisan route.
What did I say? The partisan route?
Yeah.
I'm sleep deprived. I think they should have tried the bipartisan route. And if it didn't work, well, then we tried. But they didn't try. I mean, they got off, I think, on the wrong foot. And so, I mean, who knows? Biden's presidency might be in better shape.
I did an interview with Congressman Ro Khanna for the Washington Monthly. It's not published yet. I'm still typing up the transcript. And I put that question to him. And And, one of his points was, and he's someone that I should say in general is not anti-bipartisanship. He has a new book out, Dignity in the Digital Age. He talks about opportunities for bipartisanship with tech policy in the book a lot. He's been quite open saying we have to compromise on Build Back Better and things like that. But one point he made was that one of the Obama lessons was that we can't do austerity politics in times of crisis. And I think I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think the sense I got from him was, however, whenever you think about the American Rescue Plan, we went big at a time of crisis to make sure that the economy didn't go into the ditch. It didn't go into the ditch. You can debate inflation and whatnot, but the economy is growing, jobs are being created. People could have suffered a whole lot more if we didn't do that. Now, maybe there's an argument to have that you didn't have to do as much as you did, that you could have done something with Republicans, it would have been smaller, but still sufficient. And Connor mentioned himself, all this CARES Act money before Biden was bipartisan.
Yes, that's the thing. They had just passed these huge spending bills on a bipartisan fashion. And so, number one, they could have done another one bipartisan. And number two, if the price tag came down, that might have actually been a good thing.
That's what you're never going to fully adjudicate it because we can't turn back time. We can't try out the other strategy. Inflation could have happened anyway because of supply chain issues. Inflation is happening in other countries, not just here. But could you have gotten the same result or even a slightly better result if you were at 1 trillion, not 2 trillion? We don't know.
Yeah.
I think I can't solve the economic debate, but I do think that starting on a bipartisan note would have led to different expectations, and you wouldn't have had this missed expectation that the left is suffering right now. They thought they had 50 for the whole agenda, and they don't, and now they're scrambling to, for a plan B, which is still causing a lot of consternation because the plan B hasn't even come together yet.
We are in agreement as per usual on this stuff, Bill.
Let me ask you about something else happening. This trucker convoy business.
Doesn't Freedom Convoy Freedom or Freedom Convoy, doesn't that just sound like a great 1970s movie?
There's the convoy song. Was there a convoy?
Has to be, I was heading toward Canada. There has to be like one of those, we got a big old convoy songs, right?
But isn't this, we were all during 2020, everyone on the right's like, the cities are out of control, riots everywhere, where's the law and order? These Democrat mayors aren't cracking down. Tom Cotton was like sending the military to bust these things up. And how is what's going on in Ottawa any different? This is
totally different, Bill. This is our people.
So are you with me that this is not civilized politics on the part of the right here?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm actually writing a column about this today. I'm trying to sort of sharpen my argument because, on one hand, I try to be as understanding as possible. I believe I'm not a big protest guy. I think people have the right to protest, but this is, in a sense, lawlessness, right? This is like, do you remember, by the way, Bill, there were Republican legislatures that passed laws basically saying that if you run over a protester, if they're blocking traffic, that you can't be held responsible for that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Now, our guys are blocking traffic. They've got big rigs doing it, so good luck, running them down. I don't know. I think I'm with you again on this. There's something about it. This is what the left does. They do stuff like this. This is not our move. And I think it's indicative of the fact that the right is adopting the left's erstwhile voters, and their tactics. I don't like that.
What I don't understand is, what is the evidence that the tactics of mass disruption worked for the left in 2020? What about it made conservatives think, oh, that's a good idea? That was really helpful to them. Why don't we try that and we'll get something out of it that way? What is the argument for that?
That's a good question. But I think that this is, I don't want to compare this to the insurrection, but, I think that the conservatism, I don't think has ever been comfortable with this sort of protest. Now, the right is different than conservatism. There were like the hard hat riots in New York, which I would say, broadly speaking, is the right. This is where like construction workers beat up hippies and punched hippies, which I think we all can at least admire, but you shouldn't take violence into your own hands. You shouldn't take the law into your own hands. That's the job for Chicago cops, not for law, not for construction workers. I kid. So I don't know if it works. I think it's cathartic. And obviously, if you feel like your voice is not being heard, you don't think you feel like you're a victim and you have no way to sort of adjudicate your aggrievements, like at the ballot box or whatever, then maybe you do something like this. By the way, Bill, this is hidden our way. According to the Department of Homeland Security, they are expecting Washington, D.C., and possibly the Los Angeles, where the Super Bowl is taking place on Sunday, that there could be blockades and traffic problems because of this sort of thing coming south. I don't want them to export their, radical individualism down here, Bill. Those crazy Canucks.
What I find, what's so stupid about all this is, I think there's sort of a dual stupidity going on that is somewhat contradicting each other. Omicron's ending. The numbers are coming down. We're going to reach a point where restrictions can be eased because the numbers are coming down. We just had in Virginia the governor try to force the issue with school mask mandates and triggered a backlash from the blue parts of the state, which in Virginia is still a light blue state, where you had tons of school districts rebelling and resisting the executive order because they're still he did in the middle of the Omicron spike, where he could have waited 2 months, could have waited 2 months, say, you know what, I'm going to do this, but it's going to wait a little bit till this eases, till these numbers ease. To put some hard numbers on this, and I don't want to say that these are magical numbers that are incontrovertible, but everyone's working with educated guesswork here. But the CDC had a recommendation that when the community spread when the community case rate is 10 per 100,000, that's when you should lift school mask mandates. Scott Gottlieb, who was Trump's FDA chief and now works for Pfizer, he's a commentator. He's not a super crazy Trumper. He seems to be a guy who calls it straight. He said, I think the CDC's recommendation is a little too tight. I would make it 20 per 100,000. Virginia, at least a week or so ago, was in the 70s. Now, New Jersey sort of starts leading the pack of Democratic governors saying, we're going to start pulling back on these mask mandates. Now, Jersey, when he made that announcement, was down to 34 per 100,000. So he was pretty close to 20. And he didn't pull it right away. He said, we're going to pull this, a month from now. But a month away, he's probably going to go past 20. So I get New Jersey doing that. But of course, the nuance of this don't get reported that cleanly. So then all of a sudden you have this domino effect of other states doing it in the Northeast, where their numbers are actually a little bit higher than New Jersey's. No, granted, but everything's coming down. Like, we're going to get there. We are going to get there. So what's so dumb about this is just like a little bit of extra patience. And you could do this in probably a cleaner, safer way.
Probably.
But because there's this frustrations building, and I don't think it's necessarily widespread frustration, because again, you had a backlash in Virginia. You had people saying, hey, I think you're doing this too soon, and don't make me take the mask off my kid when I'm worried about the spread in my area.
But there's frustration. We keep thinking it's going to be over, 2 weeks to stop the spread. And you've got these truckers, which I'm guessing they tend to be kind of Trumpy type of people. just kind of working class, Trumpy kind of guys, and mostly guys. They're riding around. All they got to do all day is listen to talk radio, probably. So they're probably listening to a lot of talk radio. And also, I think the rules changed. Like, I think there used to be a rule that they did not have to get vaccinated, and Canada just, or at some point, Canada changed that rule. And there were, so, historically speaking, if you give people freedom and then you take it away, that's when you get problems, And so I think all those things are adding up to the frustration that we're seeing. And then I think also there is the excitement of it, the revolution, there is there's something fun. And this is why I don't like mobs and sort of crowds and group psychology. They are now a part of something, right?
Well, that's why I think a lot of these Democratic governors, got caught up in the domino effect because they want to be the ones cutting the ribbon. They want to be a little bit ahead of the curve. We weren't Grinches. We weren't Scrooges. So we're going to roll the dice a little bit and give you this freedom. And look, it might all work out because again, these numbers aren't rock solid. No one can question them numbers. So maybe it's going to.
Our friend Josh, at National Journal, Josh Kraushaar writes that Biden missed his COVID moment.
I don't think that's fair because here's the thing: the most important thing is to actually beat the pandemic. That's what What Biden gets judged on by November is how we are doing in November. And if you're driven by short-term political concerns and not by the actual numbers of the virus, you might overshoot and get burned later.
You can't have another mission accomplished moment.
And in the case of schools, and I can't remember if I said this on the show before or not. The thing that's been hardest for me is not the masks. I tussle with my kids over all sorts of things. They push back at me on almost everything. They get mad at me about what shoes they have to wear. They get mad at me wearing a jacket sometimes. They don't give me a hard time about masks. They might care about what kind of mask they wear. They want to wear a certain kind of mask, but if they wear masks at all, they've accepted that. That's just not a thing that's been an issue for them. Now, the thing that's disruptive to me is when they can't go to school. If my kid gets the sniffles and I have to get a COVID test before they can go back, and I have to wait 4 days to get the test and to deliver the test and get the test results back, that's disruptive. And if you end up getting wider transmission of the virus and they can't go to school, that's going to be a bigger deal. Now, again, maybe it's all going to be fine because the numbers are coming down. But that's what I think you have to worry about the most here is that the disruption can come in many, many forms. And I think people got kind of fixated on the mask as being the big disruption. I don't think that is the big disruption.
Well, look, I think, according to Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the aforementioned Gottlieb, the cloth masks don't do anything to prevent COVID.
Well, this is just my school. The kids can't wear cloth masks anymore. They have to do surgical KN95 or N95. And
it's harder to breathe through. The masks that work are harder to breathe. I assume it's harder to hear people. Stacey Abrams took off her mask in that picture, which got her in trouble.
Right.
I think one of the reasons is she said that the kids couldn't hear her. Well, guess what kids are doing all day is listen to their teacher. You can't read lips. Are they hearing the teacher? Is the teacher hearing them? And now it's been a couple of years too, Bill. And just think of the psychological toll and just not actually seeing someone's face.
This is all very hypothetical. There's no data here. There's no sign of research that says that the masks have actually caused this. I know people have speculated about it, but I think people have sort of assert that stuff as incontrovertible fact. And we don't really know that's been the psychological issue. I think there's psychological issues and mental health issues that have been involved in this pandemic.
Yeah, the lockdowns are more.
I personally, this is my own gut opinion. I'm not saying this is science either, but I feel like the social distancing aspects, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have social distancing, but I feel that my kids have less social interaction. They can't easily, make new friends. One of my kids has been in middle school the entire time this pandemic, where you get fed in from the other schools. I mean, I think she has met some new people, but I think it's been constricted because of this.
Man, I wish that my middle school had been like socially distant. I wish I didn't have to go to middle school.
Maybe it would have been worse. Maybe there would have been a whole lot more problems.
If I could have just missed like 6th and 7th grade and been like, I'm not saying we should have had some sort of a pandemic, but if you had to have one, that might not have been a bad time.
So I just feel like I'm really caught up on the masses being like the biggest scourge of this whole thing, and I just don't know if that's really true.
Yeah. All right. To be continued.
Yep. I'm going to go dog. I pick up kids from school. So I will hopefully see you next week.
All right, my friend. Check us out at DMZ Show on Twitter, and we'll see you back here in the DMZ maybe next week. I'm keeping my options open, Bill, but fingers crossed.
All right. Bye-bye.